Good morning, everyone. It is absolutely delightful to see you. Can I see all your smiling faces? Yes, a few smiles, a few not so smiles. Don't worry, we are not going to do a mock exam this morning. What we are going to do is what we call a walking, talking mock. And as Mr. Morrison says, I'm sure you're really confident and really clear about what this is. I am going to walk you through a paper 2 for English. A couple of reasons we're doing this. Number one is really because very often when students make mistakes in exams, they've done some pretty key things. And one of the major mistakes is, in fact, all the research shows that students who don't get the grades they wanted to get, they didn't read the question properly. So one of the key things we're going to do today, guys, is we're going to go through each of those questions in paper 2, and I'm going to show you exactly how to read it and exactly what's expected of it. And because you're some of our highest achieving students, I'm going to show you exactly what the highest grades should look like. I hope you're going to get something out of the day. All I need from you is to think, use your brains, and to think quickly and to write quickly. We're not going to complete the mock, as I said, but we are going to plan out what the answer to each question should look like. Then at the end, I'm going to give you a little bit of advice about how I would approach my revision and about how I would approach these exams as well. We're going to do a slot of about 45-50 minutes. Then we're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to do another slot of about 45 minutes as well. So we're going to go bam, bam, bam. We're going to get through all of section A and all of section B as well. And I hope when you walk out of here, you've got some new ideas and you're very, very clear about exactly how you should approach this exam. Right, equipment, guys. First of all, if you haven't got them today, don't worry. But for me, one of the most useful things you can take into an English exam is a bunch of highlighters. Because those highlighters allow you to pick out key words, they allow you to pick out key language features and structured features in the text. So make sure that you bring a whole range of highlighters into your exam, please. Do not mark on your response paper, because if you do, they're computer scanned and sometimes it blacks out what you've written. So you might have written something really amazing, a really fantastic adjective, or a really amazing bit of analysis, and it will just black out because you've highlighted over the top of it. So please make sure you bring in your highlighters into the exams. This is what paper 2 looks like. I hope that it's pretty familiar to you. And I was telling some English teachers yesterday and some heads of English, what we have to remember is you guys are doing 8, 9 GCSEs. You've got all these different timings to remember and all these different papers to remember. So I'm just going to keep reminding you of this, and we're going to keep reminding you of this, because the timing is everything. Absolutely everything. I have seen students who are going for this exam, they're going to get an 8, they're going to get a 9, and then the timing isn't quite right, and they don't get the marks that they need to get for some of those higher grades. So timing is key, and it's going to be one of the key focuses of what we're looking at today. 4 questions in section A, as you know, 4, 8, 12, 16 marks. They gradually ask more of you as you go through those. The marks gradually increase, and the amount of time you need to spend on each of those questions gradually increases as well. And then we get to section B, everybody's favorite, and I expect you all to smash section B. There is no excuse not to go for full marks on that paper, and I'm going to show you how. Right, what will the text be? In paper 1, you know you're going to get a fiction extract, and that can be anything. It's going to be a story, basically, or an extract from a novel. Paper 2 is a little bit harder. You're going to get a non-fiction, 2 texts, and it can be any of these: an article, a report, an essay, travel writing. Well, you can read them off the board. Travel writing's been really popular in the past, by the way, so maybe go and have a look at some pieces of travel writing. If you go on The Guardian, The Telegraph, The Times, their websites have their magazines, and they've got some really good reporting on there. So go and have a look at those. It'll give you some examples, some really good language that you can analyze, but it'll also show you some really good journalism that you can steal ideas from, particularly for that section B, where you're going to be writing a letter or an article or a speech. You need to steal, magpie some of those ideas for me, guys. So that's what you could get. Today, if you've done these before, don't worry, because I'm going to talk you through the process, but I'm going to give you 2 texts about prisoners and prison life. And we know, you should know, and if not, I'm telling you, that one of your texts will be a 19th century text. It will basically be about 100 years older or more. Sometimes they're a little bit tricky to read. We know back then the sentence structure, the syntax was sometimes a little bit more complicated. They put words in slightly different order. Sometimes they had much longer sentences. Sometimes some of the language they used, the vocabulary was a little bit difficult to access. Don't panic. It doesn't really matter what you get. If you're finding it really hard, everybody's finding it really hard. So the bench is going to be leveled out for you there, guys. But really read that carefully. And the one I'm going to give you today, I think, is very accessible. It's by a writer I think you know, Charles Dickens. And it's about his experience of going into a prison and seeing a man on death row. Basically, in this text, he's waiting for his execution in the morning. And he describes the experience of this man waiting for his death to come with the sunrise. It's a true story. It's pretty bleak. As you know, Charles Dickens was really into social reform, and one of the things he wanted to do, alongside writing his fantastic novels, was writing about the experience of the poor and the disenfranchised and the suffering in Victorian England. Salisbury is a much different one. It's a modern one, and it's by a guy called Michael Romero, who is himself a prisoner, and he's writing about his experience of being in prison. And it won't surprise you that neither of these experiences are very pleasant. Right, enough of me. I'm going to hand over to you to read the text. This is what you need to do. The exam boards recommends 15 minutes. I think that's quite a long time. If you want to spend 15 minutes, that's fine. I think you could do this in 10. For me, you need to start writing at some point. But I'm going to give you 10 minutes now. This is what I need you to do. I need you to really, really read these two texts. And I need you to look for two things. First of all, what the viewpoint of the two writers is. What are they trying to say? What do they believe? What are they trying to tell us in these two texts? What's the content, but also what's the attitude or the viewpoint of the writers? And number two, how do we know that? And this is where you start looking for language features. This is where you start spotting metaphors, simile, figurative language, words that stand out, triplets, anything that jumps out at you. And I'll tell you now, the exam board will give you text where you will find this stuff. They're not going to give you a text where you're never going to find anything. They think really carefully about these two texts, and they're going to give you something where you will find something. So, in a minute, you're going to put your name on the front of the paper, you're going to turn it over, you're going to read your two texts, and then you're going to annotate the hell out of it. You're going to read really deeply. You're going to try and work out, what is this writer saying, and how do I know it? All good? 10 minutes by my watch, guys. Let's go. Right, thank you, everyone. Could you put your pens down, please? That was excellent. Well done. Top tip number one. I saw a couple of you in the last couple of minutes stop and just do this. Can anybody tell me, by putting his or her hand up, how many marks difference between a grade 8 and a grade 9? Does anyone know? It's one. 1 mark difference. Difference between a grade 3 and a grade 4 is 1 mark. Grade 5 and 6, 1 mark. And in August, when you come in here bright, really excited, ready to get your exam results, you're going to get a bit of paper. It's going to be an envelope. You're going to open it up, and your parents are going to be standing over there really nervous, and you're going to tell them to go away because you want to do this on your own, and you're going to open it up. And on one side, you're going to see a bunch of grades against your subjects, and it's going to be anything from a 9 to a U. You won't get not U's at all. And next to that's going to be a mark. And that mark is how many marks you got equivalent to that grade. And for some of you, you're going to be 1 mark into the grade up, whether it's a 7, an 8, a 9, and you're going to go, whew. And we're going to go, you lucky thing. You just got that grade 7. You just got that grade 8. Some of you are going to be 1 mark under. So you're going to be a grade 7. If you got 1 mark more, you'd be a grade 8. Now that bites. That really, really bites. So the learning from that is chase every single mark. Use all the time. If you have 1 minute left at the end, till the end of the exam, and you know you're done, check it again. Add 1 more sentence. Check all your language. Check all your proofreading, because that 1 mark might be what bumps you up to the next grade. Right. I hope you engaged well with those texts. I think they're very well written. I think they're very powerful texts. I think they're powerful in the first instance because we've got a man who's about to die in 6 hours, I think it was. And in the second one, we've got a man who is talking about his experience of prison, the violence and the boredom in equal measure, as I understand it. Let's have a look at question one. Question one should be a quick 4 marks. It's designed, students, to give you an easy way, and it's designed to get you understanding and engaging with the text. It's designed to give you a quick win at the beginning. You should get 4 out of 4 of this one. You should spend no more than 5 minutes, and you should move on. Sometimes, however, they can be a little bit tricky, and I'm just going to show you an example of one that's slightly tricky that did catch a few people out when this was an exam question. So, you know the task. You've got 8 statements, 4 of which are true, 4 of which are false. We are looking entirely at source B here. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I want you to establish which of these statements are true and which of these statements are false. And I'm going to give you a little clue. Read the statements really carefully. Remember what I said. The number one reason students don't do well in exams, who tried hard, worked hard, put in effort and revision, is they don't read the question properly. 5 minutes, go. Right, guys, thank you very much indeed. So, this one was a little tricky. This one was a little tricky. Let's get the ones that we know are absolutely true first off. Right, number one, some people work the mornings in the prison. Yes, of course they do. It clearly says a man may come to spend his mornings at work. Nice and simple. You should have found that one. Really happy with that one. Tick, 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 all good. Right, the prisoners are not allowed out of their cell block. Well, they are. So we know that that one's false. We can put a big cross against that one. Absolutely not. Right, now number 2 is slightly tricky. I'm going to move on and come back to number 2. It's actually wrong, but you need to think about how you could read that. They're a little bit naughty with this one. Number 4 is a little bit confusing as well. If they work in the morning, they can still go to the yard. Does that mean they can go to the yard at any point or not? Again, it's how you read that one. So let's, at this point, where we're a little bit unsure about a couple of them, let's find out the ones we're definitely sure about. Okay. The prisoners often get a good night's sleep. No, in fact, he said they are sleeping and tossing and turning all night. They do not get a good night's sleep. The prisoners feel that each day is different. No, he even says the routine is as certain to him as the years he must do. The routine is one of the key aspects of this. Thank you very much indeed, sir. And in fact, he says, part of the punishment, perhaps, of prison is the boringness of it all, the routine of it all, the mundanity of it all. The prisoners get angry when they have to stay indoors. Yes, he even says if you take away the yards, tempers begin to go bad. Absolutely, 100%. And from that, I would extrapolate, I would infer, I would understand, all those words mean the same thing, that the yard is very important to the prisoners. And actually, although it doesn't explicitly say that, we can infer that from everything else that's said about the yard and prison life. So, where does that leave us? If they work in the morning, they can still go to the yard. Well, they can if we're reading it as it's not that they can't work in the morning. Now, the reason number 2 is wrong is because it says they have the chance to play volleyball or basketball. Well, actually, they have a chance to play all sorts of other different things. And volleyball or basketball suggested there was a binary opposition. It was one or the other. And it's not one or the other. And because they've included all these other sports as well, I would happily say that that statement is untrue. Don't worry if you got caught out on one. That was a little bit naughty. It is semantically accurate, meaning the meaning of it is accurate. Semantics means mean. Anything with sem at the beginning means meaning. But it was a little bit naughty. It's 1 mark. If you drop that, don't worry. Let's move on. That's what it should have looked like. I'm sure you all got 3. And for the love of God, don't mark 5 down. If you mark 5 down, they won't just assume you've got the 4. They'll give you 3 automatically if you've got 4 of those right. They'll mark 2 of them as wrong. Good. Right. Let's have a look at question 2. We can turn to that in our booklets, please, students. Right, question 2, 10 minutes, no more than 10 minutes. I've marked a lot of, or looked at a lot of mock exams over the past week, students, from your previous one, and not necessarily in this school, but some in this school. People are spending far too long on questions that aren't worth those amounts of marks. So it's 8 marks, no more than 10 minutes, please. If you find yourself going over 10 minutes, stop, move on to the next question. And the idea behind that is pretty obvious. You could write 3 pages of the best analysis on this question anybody has ever read. It could be brilliant, grade 9 analysis. Doesn't matter, you're never going to get more than 8 marks. They cannot award you more than 8 marks. So spend the right amount of time on the right amount of marks. If you take away nothing else from today, take that away. Right, over to you guys. Could you identify the key words in the question for me? Please get your pens, get your highlighters, underline, highlight the key words. What is this question actually asking you to do? Remember, read the question properly. Shouldn't take us more than about 20 seconds to do that. You should be good at reading keywords. Look for the verbs. The verbs are what is it asking you to do. Look at the content, what's it asking you to focus on. Look at the sources, where, which text are you referring to? All good? Excellent. Right, you should have got this. Both sources A and B. Some students, not you, some students will only write about source A in the exam. Some will only write about source B. That will significantly limit the number of marks. It's a summary, and while it's only worth 8 marks, we know we're not going to write huge amounts. It's a summary. We are summing up. We are capturing both texts in a summary, in an overview. We're looking at the differences between the facilities and the environment. So that's 2 things we need to break down, facilities and environment. And for me, I would very, very quickly knock up a short table like this. Now, some of you will text annotate. They'll have different color highlighters. They'll approach the text. They'll go, I'm going to identify the facilities. I'm going to identify the environment, and you will do it that way. Some of you might like to draw out a quick plan. I'm going to hand it over to you now. We're going to plan this, not write it. Could you, in source A, please, tell me what facilities there are? In source B, tell me what facilities there are. In source A, what the environment is like. And in source B, what the environment is like. 2 skills here. First of all, you're reading the text to understand the context, the content, but also inferring from it, particularly with regards to the environment. What's the environment like here, and how do I know that that's what the writer wants me to feel the environment is like? Over to you. I'm going to give you 4 minutes on this one. Plenty of time. Go. Right, let's stop there. Right, well done, everyone. 5 minutes goes quickly, doesn't it? Remember, think quick, write quick. Part of the skill of this exam is to do it in the time frame. If I gave you 3 hours to do this exam, I expect all of you would get very high grades. There's pressure under the exam, but that's good pressure. It focuses the mind. It gets you writing. I should have said at the beginning, and I will include it on for another slide, some of you might like to just read all the questions for 1, 2, 3, and 4 beforehand before you actually start looking at the text, so you've already got an idea of what you're looking for. Some students really find that helpful. So look through the questions, read 1, 2, 3, 4, see what the focus is, then read the text, and you've got that in your head already. So on your very first reading of the text, you've already got an idea of what you're meant to be looking for. Right, I'm going to put up what I found, or rather what I would have written about. It might be different to yours, don't worry. One of the really fantastic but equally frustrating things about English is that as long as you can evidence your answers, as long as you can say things with confidence and you can put reference with textual detail behind it, then it's fine. It's all going to be credited. So you might have something different to what I found, or you might have used different words. That's fine. Again, here we go. So in summary, I thought the facilities in source A were very basic: a stone bed, a candlestick, a bench, a Bible torn and worn. There was the window with very little light coming through. Basically, it was a pretty unpleasant place to be. Very, very few facilities. And Charles Dickens is really trying to draw our attention to that, isn't he? There's basically nothing in this room. However, for our source B in 2012, they've got lots. They've got access to work, access to education, access to recreation. There is lots and lots for these prisoners to do. And actually, for me, I think that really speaks, perhaps, students, to different values about how we treat prisoners, and about the system for trying to rehabilitate people as well. The Victorians just wanted to punish, whereas in modern prisons, we're trying to make people good citizens again, trying to get them back there to be useful in the world. The environment, let's have a look at that. Well, the environment, again, this also was pretty unpleasant. It was something out of a Gothic novel, wasn't it? Or a Dickensian novel. The stone dungeon, his frame quivering in agony, that source of dread waiting for execution, that sense of anxiety hanging over him that whole time, the sense of the rising sun was going to bring his execution. The environment, and I think for me, that quote, stone dungeon, really summarizes that nicely, that Gothic sense, the unpleasantness, the anxiety being felt in this place. The environment in Salisbury is very different. And again, I think it's a real jump between just being really boring, the routines, doing the same thing again and again and again. And actually, they spoke about just 3 things they did: work, recreation, and going to the yard, and sleeping or studying as well. So there were some things they did, but it was a very, very consistent day. It was a very boring day, wasn't it? But he also talks about violence brewing. This idea that they're crammed like rats and the anxiety they feel at night. So for me, I would have answered this like this in summary. In terms of their facilities, the 2 prisons are very, very different. The modern prison has, and I would list off in summary some of the things that the modern prison has, and perhaps a little bit about why that was there. Trying to give the prisoners something to do, trying to perhaps rehabilitate them, trying to make their life more pleasant. And there is a reason for that, as we know, so they don't start fighting. While the prison of 1836 has only, and again, you would talk about the Gothic nature of that, how unpleasant a place that was to be. Salisbury perhaps reflects very changed attitudes to the treatments of prisoners since 1836. However, their environments are not so dissimilar, students. Both are clearly unpleasant places to be. And I would talk about how unpleasant these places are in different ways. And both cause great distress to the inmates. In source A, making every muscle of his frame quiver with agony, and in source B, the environment creates pain, chaos, and destruction. Look at that triplet. Look at the power of those words. So that's my summary. I'm not going to keep going for loads and loads. It's worth 8 marks. I need to move on to the next question. But I think that is a clear summary of the differences. And in some ways, I've included the similarities within that. But I focused on the differences between these 2 sources. Right. Question 3. We're moving on. Well done. Okay, guys, key words in the question, please. Again, give you just 20 seconds for this. And then we've got 15 minutes till a break. Doing really well, everyone. Great job. It's my favorite question, this one. You might have also noticed my typo in this one. I forgot to correct it yesterday. It should say you now only need to refer to source B. It does say source B in your answer booklet. So my mistake. I thought I changed it, but I haven't. Right, okay. I have changed it on this one. Brilliant. Okay. Only source B from lines 12 to 20. If you write or draw reference to anything outside lines 12 to 20, you will get 0 marks for it. Nothing. So don't even bother. And some students will do this. Not you, because you're not morons, okay? So what I would do is I would get a ruler and I would literally mark off lines 12 to 20. For your purposes, it is the last paragraph of source B. Do not write about anything outside of those lines. You will get no marks for it. Some students will, because they haven't read the question properly. Right. We've got some key bits on this, guys. How is essentially what devices are being used. What language is being used here? And I'm going to show you what to look for in a minute. And this use is the effect on the reader. I think you do SQI here, don't you, as your model for this. This is what the how is. This is the methods. We've got words and phrases, verbs, nouns, adjectives, patterns, all of these things. And I'm going to show you why that's important and why a lot of students miss that in a moment. There's the obvious stuff, the language features and techniques, metaphors, repetitions, hyperbole, rhetorical questions, all this stuff that you should be so burnt into your head by now. And I hope when you did your initial 10 minutes looking at the text. I hope this stuff kind of popped out the page for you. I hope when you were looking through it, this stuff you just find because you're reading it and you're good readers. You see the devices, the language features that are being used. In this question, you can also write about sentence structures as well. And we know what those are. Short sentences tend to suggest, short simple sentences tend to suggest something happening quickly, punctuated. Longer sentences tend to be in more of an extension, looking around, a slower consideration of a description or a feeling. Right. 4 minutes then, please. I want you to find as much as you can. I'm only giving you 4 minutes. This is a great question. You should be really, really good at this. Lines 12 to 20, look for the language. Before you start, if you can't find any of the stuff that's on the board, don't panic. You can get a very high grade without ever spotting any of that. 4 minutes. Go. Excellent. Fantastic. Good. Good, good, good. Right then, let's have a look. Okay. There was stuff in here. There was stuff to find. And be assured, students, they're not going to give you something where there's nothing there. Okay? They carefully think about these texts. They make choices about these texts so that you can find this stuff. So if you can't find something, look again. There should be a relatively good amount of language features within the text that they're giving you. There always is. Right, here's one I found. I'm going to show you how I would have structured out my response to each of these. I thought there was a really great semantic field of anger. Okay, semantic field, of course, is just words that are all sem. Remember what I said? Sem means meaning. They all mean similar things. Okay? So in this case, rage, chaos, pain, destruction, they all mean similar things. There is a semantic field of anger here. And this is what I would have said. The semantic field of anger evident in such emotive vocabulary choices, chaos, rage, hating, and destruction, are all used to, remember that one please, emphasize and reinforce the writer's overwhelming sense of mistreatment in their confinement. One of these things the exam board has picked up on is that students who write about the use of something like a semantic field or a metaphor, that's a general use. It could be for any metaphor or any semantic field or any triplet. Think about what is that semantic field doing? What is that metaphor doing? What is that triplet doing? Be specific. It's very, very important you understand that. Right, draw your attention to the fact I'm using the word used to. This is a bit of a cheap way of doing it, and I'm going to show you a more complex way in a moment. And I've picked up on the word confinement there. Used to and confinement are both in the question, and that use of is why this semantic field, why is it there? Why has the writer included it? Because you get 0 points for spotting semantic field. To be honest with you, I could train year 7s to spot semantic fields. What you've got to do, the skill of this question, is to read the text for meaning. Why has he included it? What does it add to the text? What's the effect of that semantic field on me as a reader? Let's have a look at another one. See if you can guess what I was going to write about here. Crammed rats, cages, keepers. There's an extended metaphor. And the extended metaphor, as I'm sure you know, is when a metaphor is continued on. It's picked up again further on in the text. In this case, the extended metaphor of being confined like rats in cages with the wardens described as keepers is used to, well, it's great, I've spotted it, but why is it there? What's the writer trying to do with it? Well, in this case, he's trying to demonstrate the writer's feelings of being dehumanized and treated as no better as animals in their confinement. Used to, confinement. I've picked up on those two key words again. The examiner who's sitting there at 12 o'clock at night, having marked hundreds of these bloody things, probably with a couple of glasses of wine in him or her, is going, thank God, finally a student who's making it really easy for me to give him or her marks. Make it easy for the examiner to give you marks. Don't make them go looking for it. Couple more. Did you get the alliteration? There's an awful lot of it. And in fact, there's an awful lot. 5 minutes, we're done. There's a lot of B's, the plosive, B and P. They're plosives. They're called plosives because they explode out your mouth. There's lots of alliteration, and this is what I said. Alliteration repeatedly, particularly the frequent plosives B's, supported by pairs of aggressive D's. It doesn't dampen. Future is phlegmatic. These are violent sounds. The writer is using alliteration to represent the anger he feels in his confinement, in aggressive sounds of the word. Used to, confinement. One more. Imagery. We'll quick through this one. That image of the germs and them all getting it together, really pretty unpleasant. Unsettling imagery, sharing it down to their germs, is used to depict the overcrowding and unhygienic nature of their confinement. Used to and confinement. All good. Simple as that. Don't screw it up. I'll leave the link to this PowerPoint with your teachers so you can see. I found a few others for you. And what I've also done is I've done a version where you've got links at the end so you can link it through to the next point. We won't look at that now, but I'll give you an opportunity to look at that at another time. What if you don't spot any language features at all? In the unlikely event that you don't find any metaphors, any similes, any triplets, any extended metaphors, don't panic. Because remember what the number one bullet point on that was. Words and phrases. You can pick up on interesting words and phrases, powerful words and phrases, emotive words and phrases. So this is what I write. The writer uses aggressive language to describe the pain, chaos, and destruction that can be experienced when confined in prison. And the use of such emotive words really shifts the text to one of violence. If you can't find metaphors, don't worry. Look for the powerful verbs. Look for the powerful adjectives. There will always be verbs. There will always be adjectives. Think about why has the writer made that choice. And in this case, students, chaos, pain, and destruction. I'm struggling to find other words that could emphasize the anger he feels, the aggression he feels. They are very powerful, emotive words. And again, used to and confined. I've kept them in there. Right. Just want to show you what a grade 5 to a grade 9 might look like in this one. This is a grade 5 answer. I'll let you read that. It's very good. It's clear, it's concise, it does everything that's been asked to do. However, number one, I think you can shorten it a little bit, so I've shortened it. There's a few superfluous words there. Those of you interested in doing A-levels, and I'm sure most of you are, it was once said to me that if you want to get an A-star at A-level, you cannot have a single line of waffle, not one word that shouldn't be there. And certainly for the English language and English literature, that's important. You need to write concisely. You need to say what you want to say, not in as few words as possible, but not write more words than you need to write. And again, exactly the same thing in 43 words. And in fact, I think I've said more in this one. Let me show you what I've done. Red is the words I've taken out. Blue is the words I've replaced them with. So I've basically got rid of all the waffle. I've embedded the first quote, and I didn't introduce it when he says. You don't need the when he says. The writer uses the imagery of green glass. We know he's saying it, and we know it's him. And in fact, says is wrong, of course. It's writes, and a lot of people miss out on that one. I read lots of papers that when the writer says, he doesn't say he writes or she would write. I've embedded that through. I've turned this helps the reader understand into this shows, and shows isn't a very good word, so we're going to change that in a minute as well. And I've added in more detail. Their life and confinement gets very nasty. It is clear then. So rather than the writer is showing through this imagery, I put it is clear then. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about ly and adverbs in a minute as well. I hope you can see why that's improved. Pretty simple to do. Embed your quotes wherever you can. Don't introduce quotes you don't need to. And use words that are right, not overly extended words, using more vocabulary than you need to. And I've done it down again. I've got rid of all the red, and I've replaced it with the blue. And what I've done this time is I've been very, very specific in my language choices. The imagery of green, miles from home, well, it's kind of a romanticized viewpoint, isn't it? It's kind of an idealized viewpoint as well. It's what these men are dreaming of. So I think the idea that it's romanticized is a really, really important one. This gives us a clear sense rather than this shows. Because it doesn't just show us, it's really giving us a clear sense, and I like that word clear, about how this writer is feeling. It's not important to them, it's fundamental to them. Important and fundamental, they're two different words. They mean two different things. Something can be important to you, but things can be fundamental to you. And in this case, I think it's absolutely fundamental. And what I've done is, rather than write the violent side of being confined in a prison, I've stuck some more quotes in. Let the quotes do the work for you. It is very important to throw in short, gloomy, destructive, short quotes, one-word quotes to replace the language you would use. It shows your confidence with bringing the text into your writing. I've also done something else here. I've done square brackets. I'm sure you know what square brackets are, but square brackets basically mean you've changed the quote. In this case, it was destruction, but it wouldn't work in terms of the verb I wanted to use, so I've turned it to destructive. So you can change quotes, usually the postfix at the end, and you use square brackets to say that. Journalists do it quite a lot, by the way, when they're changing pronouns to names. And here's another example. I will jump down from 31 words to 18, and I will invite you to consider, students, whether I've lost something in this. I think maybe I have a little bit, but I've tried to reduce it down as much as I could. So the learning from this is, don't waffle, don't over-explain, make your point, embed your quotes, use quotes to do the work for you wherever possible, and use specific vocabulary, not clever vocabulary, the right word. Fundamental is not a clever word, it's the right word in this case. And just before we go to break, I'm going to give you some examples of how this might be done. If you want to get the highest grades, tentative analysis, please. This suggests, this implies, this arguably shows you are awarded marks for showing tentative analysis, cautious analysis. Identifying words as verbs, adjectives, abstract nouns. Don't call it a word if it's a verb. Don't call it a verb if it's a dynamic verb. Be specific when naming words, the word classes. Learn what your word classes are. They carry marks in this exam. Use the pronoun we. It's a nice one to talk with authority. We, the audience. Never use I. And the use of adverbials. Here we go. The writer effectively, repeatedly, clearly, evidently demonstrates. Those adverbials, those LYs at the beginning, are really, really important. They add detail to what you're trying to say. Clearly, essentially, evidently, effectively, all of those are really good words. Burn those in your word bank, please, students, so you can use those. More specific words than shows. I'm sure you know this one. This exposes, this reveals, this displays, and more targeted, accurate language, generally the right word. And again, I've given an example here. This suggests the dislike he feels for. This reveals the contempt he feels for. Different words, contempt is a better word in this case, more specific. And I've put all these together, there you go. The adjective pathetic clearly exposes the contempt he feels for this man. Not complicated, not difficult, the right words, the right choices, please. Right. Back here in 10, please. Congratulations, you've been amazing. Well done. Right, I hope you found the first session useful. I will stay at the end if anybody wants to talk to me, any questions, anything you're confused by, but other than that, we are going to crack on. And we are now on question 4, so you can please find question 4 within your booklets. We are coming up to the halfway point in our exam. We've done questions 1, 2, 3. We're feeling pretty damn good. And now we've hit 16 marks. You need to write twice as much as you would have done for question 2. Do not be one of those students that when I look through their papers, I see question 2 has 2 pages, question 4 has 1 page. For some weird, inextricable reason, they've decided to write less for the marks that are worth more. Do not do that. I'm going to keep saying that again and again and again. This is question 4. You know what I need you to do, please? Could you find the keywords in the question? What is this question asking you to do? Remember, one more time, students do not read the question properly. Go. 30 seconds. Right, okay. Again, think quick, write quick. Should all be done by now. Here we go. This is what I had. Hold of source A, hold of source B. Again, pretty obvious, but students who are not as capable as you, as clever as you, as diligent as you, will write only about one of those sources. Do not be one of those students. You will get half the marks you want. Compare and convey are key terms within this one. I'm going to draw directly to those as we answer this question. And what we are looking at is their attitudes to the prison and the prisoners within them. Two things we're looking for here. Draw your attention to this, please, students. Where it says you could you all please cross that out, please, and write you must. You must. They are not giving you advice there. They are giving you instructions. There are such things as modal verbs. Modal verbs indicate conditionality. You could, you should, you might, you ought. In this case, please change it to the modal verb, you must. Right, we're going to talk about methods in a moment. It's a slightly tricky question, this one. It's quite easy to get it wrong, but as long as you write enough and stick to the question, you'll be fine. In my experience, where students don't do as well as they should do in this question, they simply haven't written enough, or they haven't written about both sources. So pretty obvious things to get right. Right, how are they different? How are they similar? It's asking us to compare. How do we know this? Is how do they convey that? How do they show that? What methods do they use? Convey just means to transport, to convey something, from moving it from one place to another. We'll talk about methods in a moment. We've talked about the idea that it must be must. Okay, this is how I would set it out, nice and simply. I'm going to give you 5 minutes on this one, please. Source A, source B. What is Dickens' attitude to the prison? What is Romero's attitude to the prison? What is Dickens' attitude to the prisoners? What is Romero's attitude to the prisoners? Please remember, Romero himself is a prisoner. I would probably want to draw reference to that at some point because it is a huge contextual factor that is dictating, showing, giving him bias to how he might view the prisoners and the prison. 5 minutes, guys, go. And let's stop there. Thank you, everyone. Right, again, this is English. What I'm going to put up here isn't necessarily what you've got down there, but I hope it's close or similar. You may have better things than I've got. I hope you have. I trust you have. But again, it might be different language I've used. It might be a slightly different way of viewing it. But if you can evidence it, that's all you have to do. This is what I've got. I think it's pretty clear to me that Dickens' attitude to the prison is it's a brutal experience, it's lonely and traumatic, and it's designed to punish. I think for me, he has a lot of sympathy for the prisoner. He has a lot of compassion for the prisoner. He appears to not be being overly judgmental. We can imagine, we don't know, but we suspect that this man is probably a murderer, but he's going to be executed in the morning. And I think Dickens clearly has a sense of sympathy to some extent towards this man. Let's have a look at source B. Well, the inmate's attitude to the prison is that it's boring, but it's fractious. It's a fractured place, that it could go at any moment. And he talks about it being a game, doesn't he? That tempers flare, that they're ready, their propensity, their willingness for violence is there at any moment. And in that place, it becomes a very dangerous place. The inmate himself believes they're treated like animals, but they're easily provoked. They're quick to violence, and they themselves are perhaps more in charge of the prison than they should be. You may have got something similar to that. You may have had additions to that, but for me, I think that's a nice overview of what the attitudes are to the prison and the prisoners by these two different writers. Let's go back to our question. We need to think about how they've conveyed this, and we need to think about the methods. Now, this is a part of this question that's often forgotten. Whenever I talk to English teachers about question 4, their frustration is always with this idea about methods. Because what exactly does methods mean? Well, methods means that. It means absolutely anything you want to write about. Any structural features, any language features, tone, imagery, symbolism, formality, anything the writer has used in order to convey his or her attitudes. And for you, it's a free rein, because last time you spoke about language, you had a very narrow gap. This time, you can talk about as much language as you like. And this is a great opportunity to bring in that personification you spotted there, that triplet there, that metaphor there, that really powerful emotive phrase there. You can bring all of these in now. So, this question really has 3 steps. What are the attitudes of the 2 writers, which you've just done? What methods do they use to convey these attitudes? And that can be anything: formality, tone, symbolism, any of those features. And why have they used that particular method? And let me show you how that might look like in a response, please. One difference seen in the writer's attitudes is their opinion of the prisoners. In source A, Dickens provides us with a vivid image of the prisoner upon his knees and clasping his hands to prayer, while in source B, Romero presents us with the metaphor of the prisoner seeing violence as a good game. I've compared them because I've talked about the difference. I've talked about 2 particular methods, in this case a vivid image, in this case a metaphor, and I have talked about the attitudes, and I've used that word attitude back in my answer. Remember, this will be marked by an examiner who is marking 150 to 300 of these. They are tired. They are English teachers who've been at work all day. They are marking it on a Sunday afternoon while their kids are screaming in the background. Don't give them any reason not to give you the marks. Make it as easy for him or her as possible. Signpost it for them. And again, difference, attitude, source A, source B, we have signposted this for them as well as we can. Again, just to show you the grade 8 and 9, I'm going to show you how we might simplify this, or we might make this more concise writing. So I've reduced it again. I would invite you to consider which is the better. Underneath, I think I've written it in a more concise format. And the reason why it's important to write concisely is you want to go for as many ticks as you can on the page, as many ticks as you can in the sentence. What I don't want to see is tick, 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 tick. I want to see tick, 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 tick. And in the time, you can make more points. And again, students, if I could draw yourself to what I've done is I've added in more important, more specific vocabulary. One difference becomes one distinct difference, because it is a distinct difference. The attitude is over here. I've changed this as illustrated, because he is actually painting a picture for us, because we are actually looking at a vivid image. So the verb is he's illustrating this. He's creating a picture for us of this. Romero doesn't present, he reveals, because it is a reveals. It's like a confession. He's telling us what these prisoners are going through. It is a reveal, not a presentation, not a show. And what I've done here is seeing the violence as a good game. I've added in another metaphor, another method here. Metaphorically good game. So I've looked for an opportunity to draw reference to that fact that that is a metaphor, a good game. Or you can say the alliterative good game, the adjective for alliteration. Again, showing you some key ways in which you can improve the quality of your writing. Right, we're going to close off the writing section now. These are the most common errors. For the love of God, do not do these. Okay, here we go. Number 1, do not run out of time. Do not get halfway through section B of not finished. Section B, as we will see, is worth half the marks. Timing, timing, timing. I cannot overemphasize that enough. Make sure you use quotations. You know, you're not idiots. You're going to use quotations. Embed quotations wherever possible as well, and use quotations to do the work for you. Don't spend 2 sentences explaining something that can be shown in one of the quotations. This does take practice, by the way, and you need to rehearse this as part of your revision. Make sure you answer the damn question, and I hope I've shown you again and again today what the question is asking you. Missing basic spag errors. I'm going to talk to you about that in a moment. It's important, and not writing about the effect. That's your SQI. I've used the this is used to. This is used to. Don't bother telling me there's a metaphor there. Well done. Congratulations, you found a metaphor. Year 5s can find metaphors. Why is that metaphor used, and why is that specific metaphor used? There's an important distinction there, and that's the distinction between a grade 3 and a grade 9. and not writing enough in the time. If your target from your teachers is write more, that's a great target because it means you understand the question, you're writing good stuff, you're just not writing enough of it. Think quick, write quick. Your hand should hurt at the end of this exam. And I'm going to talk to you about why it's so important to get it on the page in my very final slide. Right, guys, half an hour. We are moving on to section B. Don't screw this section up. 30 minutes to plan, 10 minutes to plan, 30 minutes to write, 5 minutes to check. All of those are an important part of this process. All of them. The exam board came back last year and it felt that people were spending too long planning. I agree with them. Don't overplan it. Start writing. You haven't got loads of time for this one. You should look, 45 minutes left of my exam. Wherever you are, I'm moving on to section B now. Because 40 marks. It's worth 50% of the marks of this particular paper, 25% of your overall GCSE for English language. There is a lot of weighting by this. Make it the best damn thing you have ever written in your life. A 11-year journey up to this point. Make it the best damn thing you have ever written. Right. In lieu of time, guys, I'm going to show you the keywords on this one. You should have done some work on purpose audience format or purpose audience and text type. If you haven't, talk to your English teachers about this. But if you haven't done that work, you'll understand this anyway. This is the task that you're being asked to do. Write an article for a magazine or website in which you argue your point of view on this statement. And we know the statement, it has never been easy being a teenager, but young people today face more challenges than they have ever done before. You will always get a statement. You will always be asked to respond to that statement, okay? Have ideas. You have the advantage you have in this exam is you are taking the singularly most complex bit of anything we have ever known in the entire universe. You are taking a supercomputer into this exam. Your brain is so complicated, nobody even quite knows how it works. Utilize that goddamn supercomputer. Use your intelligence. Think. This question is asking you to think, and it's asking you to have ideas. And I can be damn sure you lot have got some ideas. I'm pretty damn sure you're pretty opinionated about a lot of things in your life. Let's see these opinions on the page, please. While I'm saying that, I'm just going to give you a little bit of context about how this works. Your paper will be marked by somebody in another part of the country. They send them out across the country. Your name will not be on it. It will be your candidate number. Nobody you know will ever read this. Nobody will even know your name. You can write something powerful, something important, something from yourself, something about your experiences, something that is meaningful to you, because no one's ever going to read it other than the examiner, who won't know who you are. So commit to this. Show what you can do on the page. And this, boys, is why the girls, no politics attached to this, this is why the girls do better in this question, because they commit to it. They put themselves on the page. Boys, put yourselves in the page. It makes all the difference. Because if the examiner feels you on this page, that will be giving you more marks. Right, okay. It's an article. Write it like an article. Headline, subheading, get all that right. It's an article. It's not a letter. It's not a speech. If it's a letter, write it like a letter. If it's a speech, write it like a speech. It's obvious, but students will miss that. They will start writing it like an essay, and they will lose huge amounts of marks for that. It's an article. It's a magazine or website, so it can be relatively informal. Don't write it like an essay. It's giving you a bit of a gift there. Write it in a more informal style. Writing informally is a skill in itself. Some people are very good at it. Some people need more practice at it. Some people just need to read more magazines. You are arguing. Brilliant. I'm sure you're all brilliant at arguing. I'm sure your parents and your brothers and sisters will all attest to how amazing you are at arguing. Let's see you argue on the page, please. And it's your point of view, what you think. And you can think anything you like in response to this, as long as you've got ideas. So here's my approach. Have an opinion, but have a mature opinion. I don't think I need to say this to you lot, but don't sound like a moron when you write this. If you get a question that says, students should be allowed to leave school at 14 and get on and go to the world of work, don't write, yeah, that's brilliant, school's stupid, I hate school, it's a great idea, you're just going to sound like an idiot, okay? Write like a young adult. Write like somebody intelligent, going out into the world with ideas and thoughts, morality, opinions, confidence, intelligence. Write like a young adult, because the chances are you're writing to somebody like me who's nearly 50 and is very stuck in his ways, and I'm not going to take it very well when a teenager says, school's stupid, everything's stupid, da 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 da. Don't do a rant on the page. This is not your vehicle for ranting about life. This is your vehicle for showing you've got intelligent, mature, considered, balanced ideas. And I'm going to get you to write those down in a moment. Not writing enough, not being convincing enough. Two things that will cost you the most marks. Sorry, young man. Right. I'm going to put this to the test. This is what you've got to do. Line down the middle of your page in a minute. On one side, you're going to write the arguments for. Why would we agree that life is more challenging for teenagers now? And there are reasons, a lot of reasons. Why, however, would we agree that life isn't as challenging for teenagers now, or no more challenging? And there are reasons for that as well. Show both sides. Ultimately, you're going to come down more on one side than the other. But I need your argument to be balanced. I'm going to give you 7 minutes for this, please, guys. 2 sides of the argument. Think, think, think. Engage your supercomputer. Have ideas. Have opinions. Get it on the page. 7 minutes. Go. Right, thank you. Well done, students. That was excellent. Just draw attention to this. Some of you may have decided to structure around the 3 appeals, the appeal to ethos, logos, and pathos. I know many of you do that. An ethical appeal, a logical appeal, and emotional appeal. That's fine. It's a good approach towards this. You can make up quotations for or rather, you can make up statistics for this. Don't make up stupid statistics, okay? I read things sometimes such as 95% of all teenagers suffer with mental health issues. That's just not true. Okay, so if you're going to make up a statistic, make it believable, okay? 9 out of 10 teenagers carry knives. No, they don't, okay? So again, remember what I said about don't be a moron. Write maturely and sensibly, and write something that is clearly isn't just made up as well. Right, this is what I would have done. Now, bearing in mind, these are the ideas of a late 40s man who really doesn't understand your situation very well. But I've worked with teenagers for 22 years now, and I hope I've captured what I think some of the arguments for and against are. You may have different ideas. That's fine, because it's your response. And as teenagers, you've probably got a better idea of how challenging life is for you. But I was a teenager once, many years ago. Right, here we go. These are my arguments for why life is more challenging for teenagers now. Social media is a force for danger. There are unhealthy influences on there to whom you are exposed. There is the continual exposure of your life and the pressure of that continual exposure of your life as well. We know that there are a lot of issues around self-esteem and body dysmorphia by basically people continually putting the best versions of their lives forward and people judging themselves against everybody else's best versions and feeling the pressure to compete or meet that standard, which is a fake standard anyway. Online predators are using the internet, as we know. Teenagers are vulnerable for that. And access to extreme viewpoints as well. The internet is unregulated. People can say whatever they like on there. You have access to some very stupid people saying some very stupid and dangerous things as well. And as impressionable teenagers, some of you may listen to those people. Housing is far more expensive for you. Education is more expensive. My university cost me absolutely nothing. It was free at that point, and I think it should be free for you as well. But university is expensive now. Lost learning from school lockdowns. You were away from your learning for a while. I'm sure the school did a very good job of that one. But all of your generation, we may potentially be slightly further behind in terms of your development, your education. And increased referrals for mental health issues. They have gone through the roof post-COVID. These are some of the factors that I think is peculiar, specific to your generation. However, social media, which you have access to, I never did growing up, is a force for good. I never got a mobile phone until I was 25, by the way. We used to go and phone people from phone boxes. It connects individuals. It gives you access to support and advice and career and training opportunities. More opportunities to work from home now, for example. Social media is a force for good in so many ways. Education is far better now. When I did my GCSEs and A-levels, we never even saw what the question paper would look like. We never practiced them. We never had a mark scheme. We literally read all the books, did all the revision, and then we were stuck in a hall and we saw our exam papers for the first time. The complete opposite of what we're trying to achieve here. There are far more job opportunities for you, interesting, vibrant job opportunities internationally for you as well. More awareness and support for mental health issues for you guys than there ever was in my day. People didn't really understand mental health in teenagers when I was growing up. And there is greater freedom to be who you are, the person you want to be. And then when I was growing up in a school in East London 35 years ago, things like race, gender, sexuality, disability, these were joked about, these were laughed about, these were the source of ridicule as well as I was growing up. So there is much more freedom for you to be the people you want to be. So from my perspective, there are strong arguments on both sides. Yes, you have difficulties, you have challenges that no other generation has experienced before, but you also have advantages that no other generation has experienced before as well. So this is how I would construct my article in response. I'd give an introduction. There are clearly strong arguments on both sides, and every generation is likely to think they have it worse than the one before. I'd look at my arguments for, I'd look at my arguments against. My summary would be, so we should probably agree that it's never been easy being a teenager, and each generation has their own issues. What we should have is faith in them to deal with these issues as the adults of tomorrow. However, now, when the examiners read your texts, they are going to really focus on two particular areas. Again, remember, they're tired, the kids are screaming. They've got 150 of these damn things to read. They've all got the same title. They are getting really, really bored of this now. Your first sentence, your first paragraph has to go, wow. It has to wake them up. It has to make them go, good, I'm going to enjoy reading this one. Right from the very beginning, it's got to go, give me a high grade. Snap them back out of their boredom. The second most important part is the last paragraph. Because if they're umming and ahhing about where they're going to put the marks, that last one is the last thing they're going to hear before they go to the mark scheme, before they decide what marks to give you. So first and last bit is the most important part, students. That needs to be where you need to put your energies into writing the best bits of writing you've ever written, ever. However, this is an article, remember. That sounds a bit like an essay response. This is an article. So you would need to include a headline, a strapline, an intro paragraph, subheadings, all the things that make it an article. Make it look like an article, please, because you will lose marks if you don't. And as an article, it can have all these persuasive features in it. You know all these. I don't need to tell you all these. I'm not even going to call them out. It's a persuasive piece of writing. Make it interesting, engaging, enjoyable to read. Make it the best damn thing you have ever written. It should guide the reader through your argument, and more than anything, it should be enjoyable to read. And if you look at it and go, yeah, it's boring, then why are you handing it in? So, these are some of the other techniques that you can use. I've put these on here, but when you want to watch the PowerPoint back afterwards, you're very welcome to do so. Again, there shouldn't be too many surprises from that one. I'm not going to get you to do this now, guys, in lieu of time, but what I would invite you to do is perhaps go away this afternoon or this evening and go and write this article. Don't do it tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. Do it now. Go and write this article so you practice it. GCSE English is about revision. There's knowledge to learn, but there's also rehearsal, practicing this stuff in the time. Can I write a good piece of writing? Show it to your sister, show it to your mum, your dad, show it to each other. Can I improve this piece of writing? But again, I'm going to repeat this. Engaging, engaging, engaging. It needs to be enjoyable to read. 5 minutes. Nearly there, guys. You've been amazing. Right, proofreading. I'm not going to ask this question of you, but whenever I ask students who's bad at spelling, I get loads of students put their hands up, and then I go and look at their writing, and they're not bad at spelling. They spell some quite difficult words wrong. What you absolutely must do, because they will punish you in the writing section, 16 out of 40 marks, 40% of the marks are simply on your ability to spell, punctuate, and write correctly. Don't make stupid mistakes. Proofread carefully. And I tell you now, students, if I were to write this article in 45 minutes, I guarantee you I would make mistakes. Guarantee you. But what I would do is I would read through carefully and I would look for them. I would go hunting for them. I would go, Mr. Powell, you have definitely made mistakes. I'm going to go and find them. So don't be so arrogant as to think you haven't made mistakes, because I guarantee you have. Equally, it's a really good idea to know what mistakes you've probably made as well. And 9 times out of 10, you've probably got what we call an error type. Something that you do again and again and again. Go looking for that. Go trying to find that, because the chances are you've probably done it as well. And this, get right every single time. Apostrophes, capital letters, basic punctuation, and homophones. If you get all of these right, you're never going to cause too much damage in this question, okay? They're going to punish you if you get this wrong. They're not going to punish you if you spell disenfranchisement wrong, okay? But make sure you get this right, and you'll be fine. Right, most common errors in writing. Running out of time, again, the same one. Give yourself time, guys, give yourself time. Not writing the correct purpose audience format or purpose audience text type. It's of a letter, make it look like a letter. If it's a speech, it needs to be delivered as a speech. Think about writing it out as you would presenting it to each other. Not writing the specific task. Again, sticking to the question. Again, if you take away nothing from today, take that away. Missing basic spag errors. Proofread, proofread carefully, please, guys. Read it carefully, slowly. Look for the errors. Assume they're there and go looking for them. Don't write a dull piece of writing. Remember the scenario I gave you. There's that examiner, he or she are sitting there, they read 150 of these, they're bored out their minds. When they read yours, weight them up, make it interesting, make it the best damn thing you've ever written. And not writing enough in the time, which we've spoken about again. Right, very, very, very final slide, guys. You have been absolutely amazing. This is the last thing I want to say. Remember I said your name will not be on it when they mark, your candidate number will be on it. In any of your exams, whether it's English, geography, history, math, science, any of them, they have absolutely no idea who you are. They don't know your name, they don't know you're at Preston School, they know nothing about you. They don't know how much revision you've done. They don't know that you've spent 15 hours a day for the last 6 weeks revising. Don't spend 15 hours a day revising. They don't know that you've done all your homework on time. They don't know what you got in your mock exam or your assessment. They don't know how often you put your hand up in class. They don't know your target grade. They know nothing about you. All they are going to do is give you marks based on what's that page. They don't know that you're nice to your mum. They don't know you're a good person. You really deserve this because you've worked hard. They are only going to go by what's on that page. Get it on the page. Do not walk out of any exam going, oh, I meant to say this, or I meant to say that. Get it on the page. Show who you are. Show off on that page. Show what you can do on that page. Be the best version of yourself on that page, because that's all they've got to go on, and you will be absolutely fantastic. You have been brilliant today, guys. Thank you very much indeed for listening to me drone on for a long time. I hope it was useful, and I hope you're going to take away from this a real idea, because I know you're working hard, that when it comes to the exams, there's a skills, there's a format, there's a framework you need to follow through. If you get that right, you'll be absolutely fine. Brilliant job, everyone. Well done.